comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So yesterday I fucking went through and listened to the recording I made with my nana the last time I ever saw her. At the time I thought, I'm not going to remember all her stories and all that sort of stuff, so I'll just sit with her, put my recorder down, and just ask her a few questions. I will say my interviewing skills of my nana wasn't the best, but we got a few things in, and it was about an hour. I got a little bit emotional through a lot of it, but it was very nice to hear my nana's voice again. And she was like 89. You could hear the lighter go every 10 seconds. She was on the darts. Her memory wasn't the best at that time, but we still got a fair bit into it. But she was telling us the story. It's mainly for my daughter. I'm glad I did it because my daughter, I don't know what it is, but every day she talks about great-grandma Steffa. And I mentioned to her, I have a recording of her, so you'll be able to hear her voice. And so I did it and went through it for my daughter to listen to. Anyway, my nana was telling the war stories and all that sort of stuff about being in Siberia and almost starving to death and then going to Persia. She said Persia a couple of times. I knew she went to Persia. Persia's Iran, by the way. But for some reason, I thought Persia was just a stop-off. I thought she stopped there and then just went straight to New Zealand. But in the recording with her, I asked her, I was like, how long were you in Persia? And she was like, I was there for 2 years. And I'm like, fuck, that's a long time to be there. What was happening there? So I just Googled Polish refugees to Iran. And it was a whole thing. It was a massive thing. So what happened was Germany invaded Poland from the west and fucking Russia invaded Poland from the east, and they made some pact, the Molotov cocktail pact or some shit like that, where they shared Poland or whatever. And so the Soviets sent like 1 million Polish citizens into the Soviet Union, mainly to Siberia and Kazakhstan and places like that, the gulags and the labor camps. And so they were there for 2 years, 2 or 3 years. I think Nana said she was in Siberia for 3 years. Anyway, Nazi Germany ended up invading the Soviet Union. And so Stalin made a deal with the president of Poland, I forget his name, who was in exile. By the way, fucking the Soviets murdered so many Poles. Like most of their elite, their intellectuals, soldiers, they all got fucking slaughtered. But anyway, Stalin made a pact or an agreement with the Polish president in exile saying you can form the Polish army, reform the Polish army on Soviet soil to help us fight the Nazis. And so part of the agreement was all the Polish citizens that had been taken into the Soviet Union as prisoners got amnesty, so they got set free. And so what happened then was a bunch of the prisoners went and joined the army. Others went fucking God knows where. But 120,000 Polish prisoners, 20,000 of those, or I think it was about 13 to 15,000 of those were Polish children, got on ships and were shipped across the Caspian Sea into Iran, where they had refugee camps set up for the Polish people. And the Polish refugees, they were cooked. They were fucked. I saw photos of them. It's just the same as like the concentration camp. They were like literally skin and bone. a lot of them didn't even make it. I think it was a 2 or 3 day journey on the boat. A lot of them didn't make it. There was dysentery, malaria. They were on the verge of starving to death. They were like right there. I remember my nana told me a story when she was on the boat to Persia. She safety pinned herself to her sister. And she was like, well, if she falls, I'm going with her. That's all there is to it. So these Polish refugees ended up in Iran on the verge of death. In the recording I have, my nana was like, she bumped into some lady, her sister, Genya. Rest in peace, my auntie Genya, my nana's sister, passed away last week, I think it was. She hung in there for 6 more years after my nana passed away. I think she was 2 years younger or 3 years younger or something like that. But she just passed away. She had dementia and was deaf and blind. And so anyway, my nana was saying she saw some lady from the village or something like that, some auntie or a friend or something like that. And she came over and said, could you eat? And my nana was like, yeah, I could eat anything. I'm starving. And then she's like, that was the worst mistake I ever made in my entire life, because for the next 2 days, blood wouldn't stop pouring out of me. And I was like, Jesus Christ. Anyway, so these brutal, vicious Muslim Iranians who were also in genuine hardship as well. There were food shortages and all sorts of shit going on in Iran at the time. But these vicious animals, when the Poles got off the boats and were being led into the refugee camps, the Iranian people started throwing things at the emaciated Polish refugees, and the Poles getting off the ships thought they were throwing rocks and objects at them, and then they looked at what the Iranian people were actually throwing, and it was lollies and candies and little bits of food for them to eat. So the Iranian people sacrificed their food for the refugees, and they had fuck all themselves by all the reports. And apparently the Iranian hospitality was like unbelievable. There were reports from the Poles that saying the hospitality was one thing, but just the smiles radiating from the Iranian people was enough to nourish them after their time in Russia. Anyway, the Poles spent 2 or 3 years in Iran, and the Iranians helped nurture them back to health, nurture them back from the verge of death. And then after that, they were all relocated to different places, and that's where it got wild as well. So these fucking Poles, they went all over the place. Some of them went back to Poland. Some of them stayed in Iran. Some of them went to New Zealand. 720 went to New Zealand. That was my nana's batch. They were all children, orphans, I'm pretty sure. Some of them went to Uganda, and a bunch went to India. There was some benevolent Maharaja there. They call him the Good Maharaja in Poland. There's a square named after him. He saved 700 something Polish children. They went to his palace in Gujarat. He set up some fucking beds around his palace and nurtured these children back to health until they relocated again. It's just a wild, wild fucking story. So, like, you just got to remember, nobody is a fucking refugee until you are one. You know what I mean? And when, or if, probably more when, you do end up a refugee, you're going to want to see a smiling face and a little bit of food, So just remember that. You know what I mean? A smile goes a long way. Anyway, that'll fucking do it for tonight. And I'll see you the fuck later.